WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the program, it's that time of year again when WDET goes into the community and offers a little cheer. WDET's What's So Funny About Detroit comedy show is happening soon. We'll hear from a featured comedian. As well, we'll learn more about that first show, which is hosted by Ryan Patrick Hooper.
But first, on the Metro. It's been a long time coming for folks here who have been interested in getting affordable food in the community. And why? Because a lot of Detroiters have problems accessing healthy, affordable foods ever since the rush to the suburbs in the 60s and onwards. Why? Just a lot of stores left the city, and that was particularly true of grocery stores and markets. That's left a lot of fresh food vacancies, but some have been trying to fill it. One of those projects has been a market owned and operated by the community where it sits. And that project hasn't been easy, but it's been one that Malik Yakini has been working on for many years. And after a lot of work and coordination, he's finally done it. The Black-led and cooperatively owned Detroit People's Food Co-op officially opened in the North End on May 1st. Malik, as the co-founder and executive director of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, has been pushing for this day for at least 14 years. On Saturday, the co-op is having their grand opening. Here to talk about the project now and its importance to Detroiters is Malik Yakini. Malik,
what up,
welcome to the Metro.
What up, though?
There it is.
Really good to be here.
It's good having you because I can only imagine after 14 years of such a heavy lift to finally have it happen, it's got to mean much. Tell me, how does it feel for you?
It feels great, but I do want to clarify that this hasn't been like a solo dolo project. There's been dozens and dozens of people working on this, and I want to give a shout out to the team. In fact, that's the strength of this project, that it was a collective project. In fact, the co-op itself is collectively owned, and so we want to really uplift the group effort that made this happen.
Yeah, you couldn't do it with one person, right?
Absolutely.
You need the community effort. You see it in the co-op, right? Which, for folks who might not even be familiar with what a food co-op is, can you kind of explain that model to us?
Sure. So what we're operating is what's called a consumer co-op, where we currently have more than 3,500 what we call member owners, people who have paid or are in the process of paying a $200 membership fee. And we say member owners to distinguish the Detroit People's Food Co-op from places like Sam's Club, where you can pay a fee and be a member, but you have no ownership, you have no say-so in what happens in the store. Ownership in Detroit People's Food Co-op gives you a say in the policies of the store, to some extent the product line. You know, once we hire managers, which we've done now, they're running the day-to-day on the store, so member owners aren't doing much of that. But in the days leading up to the opening, the design of the store, product line, all the questions about what has to go into a grocery store, member owners were meeting on committees to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. So does that mean if I'm a member of the co-op, I walk in, feel like someone's giving me the side eye or something, and say, hey, remember, I'm an owner here.
No,
sir.
they're not going to give you the sign. In fact, they're going to ask you, are you a member owner? And if you're not, they're going to try to sign you up. They're probably going to greet you with, what up, doe, like I greeted you when I came in here today.
Which is part of this. That means that you don't just have to be a member owner to access the grocery store.
Yeah, it's open to the general public. So, of course, we want to encourage people to become member owners because we're pushing this concept of community ownership and promoting a non-extractive circular economy. But the store is open to anyone who would want to shop there, and we want to encourage the general public to shop.
Let's get back to the process of getting this thing off the ground, because a lot of folks would tell you, right, that access to healthy food, to food in the city has been something difficult. And even though some grocery stores have been popping up, it still is it's difficult to access for some communities. And that would make me think it'd be a little easier to get something like this off the ground. What would be the barriers or challenges, especially where there was a need that you guys saw?
Well, there's multiple barriers and challenges, and the basic barriers that we live in a capitalist system that gives favor to corporations and individuals who have lots of money, and not coincidentally, the system of capitalism is tied to the system of white supremacy. And so those two things work to marginalize and create all kind of barriers for black folks who are trying to do major developments in our community. So, of course, one of the barriers was getting the $22 million that it took to build this building. That took us quite a while to do that. Getting the land was quite challenging. We spent several years trying to get this prime spot on Woodward Avenue. And then there's the challenge of convincing people prior to the actual physical building existing that they should invest money in something that at that point was just an idea. And we're doing that against the backdrop of many groups that have come through Detroit and the North End in particular, making promises about what they were going to do, and many of those promises went unfulfilled.
Well, when I think about what you're saying with the challenges, City Council, for example, it's Black-led, the greater structure, was that an obstacle that you're pointing to here in terms of
actually, the city government has been very helpful in this process. In fact, the land that we built it on, we were able to buy from the city. The former City Council President, Brenda Jones, stepped in and interceded and asked the city to help us acquire the land after we'd had several failed attempts at getting land on Woodward Avenue. And so the city administration generally on this project has been helpful.
All right. Well, what are some of the things that you're hoping to do with this co-op now? Now that you have it installed, we can move to the next levels. For example, selecting what's going to be in the location, how it's laid out. What's the process like for you guys with that?
Well, there's a lot involved in running a grocery store on a day-to-day basis, and we have these expert managers. Akil Talley is the permanent general manager in the store. And so he knows what he's doing. He's going to make the decisions to make the store profitable. But what we're really concerned about is reversing the extractive economy that we see in black communities. In Detroit, as in most black communities throughout the United States, all of the grocery stores are owned by other ethnic groups who extract that money from our community. And that money that's extracted is the very money that we could use to develop the kind of institutions, the power, the resilience, the health that we want in our community. And so what we're doing is creating a model that we hope will be replicated not just in the food sphere, but that other folks will look at how we can create cooperative ownership models to have a circular economy so that the money that Detroiters are spending is not being stripped from our community, but is being circulated within it to create jobs and empowerment.
Excuse me, Malik. I hear what you're saying. And for myself, being a black woman, I often do my hair. I do my hair a lot. And I think about when I go to the beauty supplies or different spaces and places that I shop and do my everyday things, I think about those things as well. What's going back into the community at the end of the day. So if you could just expand on that just a little bit more, the importance of making sure that the money is circulating back into our neighborhoods and then that model replicating itself across the city of Detroit.
Right. So what we see, first of all, we have to put our situation in historical context. And we know that in Detroit and many cities throughout the United States, the traditional black business districts were destroyed. And there's a lot of discussion on this station about 275 and about how that destroyed Hastings Street and Black Bottom, and which was, the black business district. And so what happens when you destroy those business districts, when you have discriminatory policies in terms of lending and insurance and things like that, then you debilitate a community. And so now we have a community that is easy prey for other folks who want to come in and have entrepreneurial experience and have the wherewithal to start these businesses in our community to extract wealth out. And certainly, you've identified hair and nails, and, our sisters in Detroit are spending plenty of money, and none of that money is being circulated within our community. It's being stripped out. And so if we want to have resilient communities where we're in control, where we're making decisions and shaping our own neighborhoods, we have to control the economy and not allow other groups to come in and just strip the money out, which is what we've seen happen in Detroit.
And just to kind of, piggyback off of that, I think about the opposite there. What about how do we build that trust within the community to shop with one another, to barter with one another, to, to trust?
Well, so as I said, in the North End, there's been many failed attempts. And so we were operating against a backdrop of mistrust. But the same thing with black businesses in general. We've been conditioned. In fact, I'll say that the system of white supremacy has kind of two aspects. It convinces white people that they are the best thing since sliced bread and that anything of value in the world has been created by white people. And conversely, it convinces black people and other people of color that we have some inherent inferiority. And so we're operating against that backdrop. And so what we have to do is we have to run an excellent store with excellent customer service, and nobody can argue with that. When people, as they say, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. Nick, I just listening to the conversation, you asked a good question earlier. That's why I just decided to jump in and ask that question there. But yeah, that was you were actually talking about 375 that ran
thank
through.
You, 375.
Yeah,
not
no worries.
275.
Yeah, 375 that ran through Hastings Street. But Nick, go ahead.
We're speaking with Malik Yakini, co-founder and executive director of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. Malik, I do want to push you a little bit on this because you've linked two things together, the idea of capitalism being necessarily extractive. I think some would say not necessarily. We've seen examples in places. You mentioned Black Bottom, for example. Well, wealth was being created in the community by people spending their money there. You can have Black people who can gain capitalism, and we all have a choice with what to do with our dollars. So can you make a little bit more of a connection as to why you would say that this model would be superior for generating wealth as opposed to just concerted efforts by creating a better product for Black folks to use and keep money in the community and spend it there and create it through capitalism?
All right. Well, thank you, Brother Nick. And I want to push back gently against your gentle pushback and say that capitalism is a system that's destructive for both the planet, because it views the planet and the other animals and plants that we share the planet with as being sources for us to, again, extract from our benefit, as opposed to looking at it as an ecosystem that we are a part of and that we have the responsibility to steward. Also, just the origins of capitalism, and I don't have time to really get into that long history lesson, but there's plenty of books that talk about the fact that capitalism developed out of the transatlantic slave trade and colonialism. And, I would, for those who would argue, I would point you to the book by Eric Williams, Capitalism and Slavery, which lays that out very clearly. But in the modern era, we can see clearly that there is some advantage in taking the money that a community has and finding ways, again, to circulate it within its own community so that it can create jobs for itself. What we find in the Black community now is that most jobs, we have to go ask somebody else for a job. Where we have the wealth within our community, if we could galvanize it and capture it to, again, create businesses like we had on Hastings Street and create all of the kind of institutions that we need in our community, both for health, resilience, and also to have an empowered community.
From what I'm hearing from you, the argument is that this community model, this co-op model, is a better way to retain that wealth or generate wealth in the community.
Yes, absolutely.
So what I would then ask or say is, I'm sure there's people who are listening who want to get started with businesses. You mentioned this being potentially a model for folks using moving forward. What recommendations would you have now that you've gone through the process as a group, the Royal You, plural, 14 years later?
Thank you. Yeah, again, there's a plethora of information out now about how to start co-ops, and there's various types of co-ops. What we have is called a consumer co-op, where the consumers are actually owners of the business, but there's also what's called worker-owner co-ops. There's producer co-ops. And so, again, there's a plethora of information out there for anybody who's interested. And I would invite people, if they want to contact us, we can help share some of that information at Detroit People's Food Co-op, and they can email us at info@DetroitPeoplesFoodCoop.com. But also, I want to stress that it's really important that Detroiters join this co-op and become member owners and shop at the co-op on a regular basis. So we're getting lots of opening day excitement. In fact, we blew the numbers out of the water, the projections the first week, and we're hoping to keep those high sales. But we have to have people who consistently support the store, not just get excited about it opening a shop there for a couple of weeks. We need in 6 months for people still to come there regularly, and a year for people still to come there regularly. And also, we are responding to the customers' demand. So as people come in and say, oh, you don't have organic watermelons, then we find out how we can get those. Or people say, oh, I want more locally grown hair products, then we see how we can get those. So we're shifting the product line in the store in demand to what consumers are asking for.
All right, Malik. Well, before we let you go, I want to make sure that we find out a little bit more about what's happening with this grand opening and other things that you're doing, including your kitchen.
Yes. So this Saturday, we have the grand opening of the building that the Detroit People's Food Co-op is located in. The building is called the Detroit Food Commons. It's a new 31,000 square foot building on the corner of Woodward and East Euclid. And so we'll have a ribbon cutting ceremony at 11 o'clock this Saturday, followed by 5 hours of activities outside in the parking lot, and we're blocking off the street on Euclid. We'll have bounce houses and all kinds of children's activities. We have bands, including my band Malik is playing at 3:30. We have community organizations who have free booths. We have chalk art for children. We have tours of the building. And as you mentioned, there's some other functions in the building on the second floor. The organization that I lead, which, by the way, is now called the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network. We changed the name from Security to Sovereignty last year. We operate 4 commercial shared-use kitchens that are available for rental, and we operate a 3,400-square-foot banquet hall called the Mama Imani Humphrey Hall, which is also available for rental for all kinds of community activities. And the offices of the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network have moved into the building. The main purpose of the building, though, is the food co-op. That's the main attraction. We really want people to sign up and join, become member owners by emailing us, or in fact, by going to our website at www.detroitpeoplesfoodcoop.com. Again, that's www.detroitpeoplesfoodcoop.com to become a member owner.
Malik Yakini, co-founder and executive director of the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
This is The Metro on 101.9 WDET, and coming up, we'll discuss an event this weekend in Farmington Hills that celebrates Detroit's queer community. It's The Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. Now, a cool partnership is coming up. The city of Farmington Hills and the Detroit Sound Conservancy, they're teaming up to bring a very unique event to audiences. The Hawk Theater in Farmington Hills will be transformed into a club, but not just any club. In 1984, a generation of Black LGBTQ plus youth in Detroit came together to create a kingdom for expression and imagination. That space became known as Club Heaven, and it vibrated with people from a range of backgrounds: DJs, performers, dancers, engineers. Anybody who was anybody was there at Club Heaven. But what happened to it? Just like the Woodward in Detroit, who closed its doors not too long ago due to a fire and hasn't opened or reopened at all, many of the well-known queer spaces have disappeared from Detroit. To talk a little bit more about this event that celebrates Club Heaven, there are 2 people helping to put it on. Sam Koeppe, gotcha, is the City of Farmington Hills Cultural Arts Programming. Sam, thank you so much for joining us on The Metro.
Thanks for having me, Tia.
Yes, and also we have Damon Percy, a Detroit Sound Conservancy board member. Damon, thank you so much for joining us on The Metro.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Sam, before we get into Club Heaven, what did it look like putting it together? Where did this idea come from? Like, just out of the ether, where did it come from?
So I moved to Detroit close to 3 years ago. And when I first started moving, obviously when you're a young gay person, you want to find your community when you move to a new place. So I saw online that Spotlight was doing an event celebrating Club Heaven. I started doing research. And even before that, started to go out in the city and hear the music and just totally be, transformed by it. And you just imagine like, wow, it really can't be any better anywhere else in the entire world. So I went to the event at Spotlight with the Detroit Sound Conservancy celebrating Club Heaven, and I saw a lot of familiar faces. I saw, Stacey Hale, Daryl G, D'Angelo Shannon, and I was like, oh, this was clearly a huge influence on all of them. And then probably about a year after that, I ended up getting my position in Farmington Hills, and I'm in a position now where I can dictate a lot of the programming that we offer. So this has been several years in the making, from me going to that event and then finally being able to put it on at my place of employment.
Yeah, which is really awesome because the Hawk Theater is this really special place that can hold you very unique performances and unique activities. So I just think about the things that you all will be able to accomplish when you're doing this. So when I think about the team up, I know that I've heard about the sound system and saving the sound system. Mm-hmm. So I definitely want to get into that with you a little bit later, Damon. But I want to get into the importance of bringing this event to the residents of Farmington Hills. Of course, everyone's invited, but bringing it to the city of Farmington Hills.
Yeah, well, Farmington Hills is very uniquely positioned in the Metro Detroit area. Not only is it the most diverse city in Oakland County, but one of the most diverse communities in Michigan. And just from a location standpoint, I mean, I can see downtown Detroit from the building. So, and we're kind of sandwiched right between Ann Arbor and Detroit and all these big kind of pockets of people. So I really see the facility as kind of a coming together point and a jumping off point. So we have partnerships with most of the major, cultural institutions in the metro area. The Detroit Symphony just played at our facility last night. We have Grammy-winning musicians playing on our stage. But I think that, when you move to any community and you bring yourself with you, obviously. So it's important to have diverse programming, not only to serve the members of the community, but to just know that, so they can know that they have a spot to come to, and there's this, we're in a unique spot being a new venue. We opened during COVID, actually. So, we get a real opportunity to build an audience from scratch. So I think we really took that opportunity we're like, okay, we have this blank slate. And when you first open a place and you're kind of figuring out how you want to run it, we just threw a bunch of stuff at the wall to see what would stick. And thankfully, all of our really special programming has stuck. So now every year we do a Lunar New Year celebration. We do an Armenian culture celebration, Native American, Black History Month. It's very apt that Malik was here. His band is playing our Juneteenth celebration coming up on June 19th. And I live right behind the co-op, so it's like,
see,
super
and
convenient.
I love that you brought that up, because it's such a community vibe. It's such especially with this event that we're talking about, connecting people, bringing people together from different communities and spaces, and being seen in together in one space. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, and Damon and I were talking beforehand, and we met over the phone yesterday for the first time and realized, of course, that we have like dozens of friends in common, and we are old friends at this point.
Right.
So, but Club Heaven was a place where, and back before the internet, you really had to seek out community a lot more. And a good friend of mine, Daryl, who's also a DJ, he would drive from Port Huron. People would drive from Ohio. People would drive from Kalamazoo, hours and hours to come to this place because, maybe you couldn't be yourself at home. Maybe you had no outlet, and it was when you need to express yourself, you'll do anything.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sam. So Damon, we're hearing about Club Heaven. What was Club Heaven?
Oh, wow. Club Heaven, I always tell people it was a place of freedom and magic and liberation. I started going when I was 18 years old, 3 years ago. No, so long ago. But it was transformative for me. I was coming into myself, as a college student, learning about the city, like any other teenager, finding places to go. And Heaven was a place that accepted everybody. Like, all colors were there. Straight and gay was there. We were there for the music, but it was about community. Ken Collier, the godfather of house, he made it to where the sound was created where the speakers pointed to the center of the room. So the sound went inside of you instead of past you. So a lot of the music that you hear, house music, was broken there.
Yes, I was going to say,
They would come and they would be in the DJ booth with him. CeCe Peniston, Crystal Waters, the record companies, they were up there. If the record broke on the dance floor of Heaven, then it was a hit. Then it would go on the radio. Then it would go out based on Ken Collier.
Yeah.
So for our community, being, young and black and gay, Detroit is a very religious city. So, it was just kind of that thing. But like community, we didn't have pagers and phones. You found each other there.
Wow.
You met your friends dancing. It wasn't no apps. You went and you saw someone dancing. Next thing you know, they're your best friend.
Yeah.
That's our song. This is our moment. Club Heaven, it represented one of kind of like the jewels of the city because it was an after hours. So for people like me, I was underage. So I couldn't get anywhere until 21, legally for recording purposes. And, went there and just like from 2 a.m. to 6, it was just like you were transported.
Once again, I love that so much. And, I think about, you talk about the dancing and the way that the sound system was faced. And I hear about the uniqueness of that sound system that was at Club Heaven. You talked just a little bit about that.
Yes.
And I know you want to try to replicate that at the Hawk Theater. So if you can, just being a member of the Detroit Sound Conservancy, the importance of preserving that type of sound.
So one of our missions for DSC is to preserve all music histories in Detroit. And so finding things that have been left, generations past, people forget, people don't know, things that's kind of tucked away as we kind of move so haphazardly through the world. We have the Bluebird Inn, United Sound System, and Club Heaven is our big project. So kind of connecting with the family and finding these pieces, in the basement somewhere and trying to restore them to a glory for historical purposes, because for Detroit, and I'll say we have the best DJs and have had, because when you look at the list of DJs that have come out of Detroit, they're still working and are inspiring. Like other cities might have 2 or 3 big names, but we have the names. That's why movement is in Detroit, right?
Say it again.
That's
but
the
why
importance is, to preserve it for what it means to the community, what it means to music history, for music history legacy, Ken Carter's legacy, LGBTQ, our community. So people will know that we exist and thrive, in the way that the media say that we don't.
Yeah.
That we aren't just, sexual creatures or deviants. Like we're people who live and thrive and love, and we have fun and we do everything that everybody else does, and they've done it with us.
Yes.
So, it's just kind of a time, early 90s is like, it was fun for everybody.
Yes.
90s was just a different decade. Like people were kind of blossoming into their own, but for us, the system is just like a great representation of that time period and those things that we wanted to represent.
Yeah. So before I let both of you go, because I'm loving this conversation, I want to keep going in. But there's this, I saw some videos on YouTube. I definitely look back. It was a 1991 Koeppe ballroom. It was just amazing just to see this, like you said, that community, the way that everyone moved and danced and flowed together, and just that love. You kind of feel that way sometimes when you're at Spotlight, like you said. You
totally,
brought that up.
And thank God those videos survive, and thank God that there are the Sound Conservancy has old mixes of Ken Collier. That's how I kind of started with my love of house music and even started to DJ. You hear like these mixes from 30 years ago, and the music is still being played all across the city and all across the world, and so much of it, like Damon said, started here, broke here. And it really is kind of an untold history. I mean, Detroit in general is one of, if not the most influential cities in the entire world when it comes to most everything, but especially music.
Music and culture. But before I let you guys go, give us the rundown about what's happening May 17th.
All right, May 17th at 7 o'clock at the Hawk Black Box Theater. We have the celebration of Club Heaven with the Hawk Theater and Detroit Sound Conservancy. Tickets can be reserved on thehawktheater.com, and tickets are free, so we hope to see as many of you there as possible.
I think that's the best. I think that's what everyone needs to know. It's free.
Free, Free.
Yes, free.
And
99.
there's going to be a DJ. DJ Tony Peoples, one of Ken Collier's students, who's a big DJ in the city. He's going to be spinning.
Thank you so much for filling that in for us. If you all are interested, you know exactly what to do. We have Sam Koeppe. Koeppe, thank you so much. City of Farmington Hills Cultural Arts Programmer. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro. Always correct me when I say your name wrong. And Damon Percy is a Detroit Sound Conservancy board member. Thank you so much, both of you, Damon and Sam, for joining us on the Metro today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tia.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET, and coming up, we'll hear from a comic that will be part of WDET's next What's So Funny About Detroit event at the Old Miami on Cass. It's the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. And coming up Thursday, May 30th, the WDET Comedy Showcase. It is back. What's So Funny About Detroit brings a diverse set of 6 comics to the stage. And one of those comics is Brad Wenzel. Originally from Monroe, Brad spent time in Los Angeles, where he appeared on Conan O'Brien's late night show multiple times. In this conversation, he spoke with WDET's Ryan Patrick Hooper about his new special. This clip begins with an introduction and some jokes by Brad.
Hell yeah, that's amazing. All right, you guys, your next comedian coming to the stage, he has been on Conan multiple times. You guys are gonna love him so much. Give it up real loud right now for Brad Wenzel!
All right. Hey, thanks everybody. I hope you guys are good. It's been a weird couple of years, you know. Like I had short hair my whole life, and I grew it out during the pandemic. And now old people don't smile back. I didn't think they were just gonna cut me out like that, but they did. You know? I miss them. You know?
Hey, I'm Brad Wenzel. I'm a comedian, and I have a new special out called Joke, 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 and album, however you want to consume comedy.
I guess the thing that really surprised me is you just doing this yourself, releasing it yourself and putting it out there, which I've seen other comedians adopt that style, but this is completely for free and something that you've done. I mean, people can watch it on YouTube for free. They can stream it for free. That of course can purchase it. But why go this route with stand-up comedy?
I think that's just kind of where media is at right now. We're at this kind of crossroads where like the technology is there. It's like so much more attainable than it was even 10 years ago to produce like a quality thing, that it's like if you can't get, you know, one of the 2 or 3 gatekeepery type showbiz people to give you a yes, then you're like, well, there's all these people all over the country who have these skills and equipment and stuff. So it's almost like if you like creating stuff, you're like, well, I guess I'm gonna make my thing.
There's a lot of freedom in that. But you've done it both ways.
No money, but a lot of freedom. I've never been so free.
I was walking a while back, and I saw a flyer on a telephone pole that said, did you lose a tortoise? Can you imagine that level of negligence? Some dude's like, I turned my head for like 2 hours.
You've had it both ways, where we talk about, like self-releasing something and then the gatekeeping side of it. You've been on Conan several times. Like you've had those opportunities to be on TV. What did that do for you, that opportunity of actually appearing on broadcast television?
That helped a lot because that was, it gives you a lot of like credibility. I would say it's like comedians, you can't get like a degree or a doctorate in funny. So people, I think, still look to those kind of mainstream success as like a marker of quality, I guess. So like when you do Conan or The Tonight Show or any of those shows, it's something people can go like, oh, well, you're a professional.
I miss the mark sometimes. Like a while back, all my wife wanted for her birthday was, she's like, I want a certain cake from a certain bakery. That's all I want for my birthday. And I was like, that's easy. I can do that. So I go online, I order the cake, and you can choose what they write on the cake. I never had that kind of power before. So I was like, what if the cake said something awesome? So I order the cake. A couple days go by, and I'm like, hey, I got the cake. And my wife very, very earnestly was just like, hey, you don't write anything stupid on my cake, right? And I was like, I got to change this. So I go online, and I try to change it, and I can't figure out how to change it, you know? And you know, sometimes you'd write something you wouldn't necessarily say in person. It was one of those. Because I had to call up a bakery, and I had to talk to a grown woman on the phone, and she said, what did the cake say? And I had to say out loud, it's me, Cake McCakerson. And And she said, "What do you want the cake to say?" And I said, "Happy birthday, Emily." And she didn't say anything, but the story kind of tells itself.
Brad Wenzel is one of the headliners at the upcoming WDET Comedy Showcase, What's So Funny About Detroit? It's happening Thursday, May 30th at the Old Miami in Detroit. That backyard is gorgeous. It's a benefit for WDET, so when you buy your ticket, you're supporting Detroit Public Radio. You can get your ticket at wdet.org/events.
It is the Metro on 1019 WDET. That's Tia Graham. I am Nick Austin, and staying in Detroit. Ever since it got off the ground, a range of folks have been critical of the I-375 Reconnecting Communities project. The project, operated with federal funding and run by the Michigan Department of Transportation, was originally slated to replace I-375 and turn the highway into a 6-lane boulevard. The mission was to offer an alternative to the highway and include a range of safe transit options for bikers, pedestrians, and drivers. Leaders of the project stated the importance of acknowledging past wrongs caused by I-375's creation and have held many community meetings meant to incorporate community impact in the project and input from that community that was impacted. But despite the meetings, many in the community don't feel heard. And yesterday, nearly 500 people with the Rethink I-375 Community Coalition signed a letter calling for Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Mayor Mike Duggan to redesign the process by which the I-375 Reconnecting Communities project is being implemented. To talk more about why this coalition is being created and why they're upset with the I-375 removal project, we have Trish Hubble with the Rethink I-375 Community Coalition. Trish, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and before we start the conversation, I will note that we have been in contact with the Michigan Department of Transportation, also currently scheduled to join us tomorrow as well to get their input. But we start here with what you guys are doing because it's interesting that this coalition is coming together now. So let's just start there. How did you guys end up coming together? And then we'll go from there at that point.
All right. Thank you for having me on the show this morning. I am a resident over in the Lafayette Park neighborhood, so I've been well aware of this project. And I know there have been a lot of community meetings, and there are various groups that are involved. Let me just say it is definitely, a complicated problem and a complicated project. But many of us in the community, and it's not just residents, but there are small business owners, there are concerned citizens from all around the city, but primarily those of us that reside in that corridor are particularly concerned that we've been to these community meetings and there has not been, we don't feel heard. And MDOT is, doing its job with roads, but we believe that the vision should drive the road. And we don't see the vision from the city of Detroit with engagement in the community. MDOT says that engagement will come at a later date, but we are adamant that the vision should come before the road. And so we're asking the governor to halt this project, just take a pause until we can have more engagement from the community. We also believe, as of right now, their public safety and pedestrian safety will be at risk. We don't think it's a safe project to date. So there needs to be a lot more input.
Well, all right. So there's a lot of stuff there. So I just want to make sure we understand. First, when you say we, you're talking about the residents that are part of this Rethink community. I know that there were 500 signatures. Is that about the number that we're talking about here?
Yes, as of today.
Yeah. And you mentioned that there has been some engagement, but you feel like the group has not been heard. So before we get into what that looks like, are there specific demands? Because you did mention that you think the vision should come first before the building. Well, then what would that vision look like? Do you guys have a unified vision of specific demands or things that you think are missing from this project?
Well, so when I talk about community meetings, I remember in particular, I think the last one, and maybe I missed one since, but I believe it was November, there was a big community meeting, and MDOT was there, the city of Detroit was there, but MDOT was really, setting forth their proposal, but there were a lot of community folks that wanted to know where the city was in this process. Where is the neighborhood framework plan? And that really hasn't been mapped out yet. So I know that, they have reduced lanes from, I think, 9 to 6, which is a start. But this is I believe this is a moment in time for the city of Detroit to really get it right. I mean, this is our entry into the city. This has all kinds of historic wounds, right? This was part of the federal project back in, the 1950s and 60s with the Highway Restoration Act, or that plan, and it really disrupted millions of people across the country, mostly people of color and in poorer neighborhoods. People are still wounded from that, and I know there are some committees meeting around the reparations and restorative justice. There's, folks meeting about the roads, and then there's folks concerned about the community issues. So there are a lot of moving parts, and people are, I think, working hard. But as the residents and this community coalition, we are just saying, take a pause, really do some work around the vision and the framework. This plan, as far as we can tell, does not really sync with the city of Detroit's Streets for People plan, where it's more pedestrian friendly and, bike friendly, and there's small businesses. Like, what is the plan for all that land? We don't really know. MDOT has been deferring action on speaking about that till a later date, but we think that's backwards.
Well, it's a question that we might be able to bring up tomorrow. We're going to continue this conversation in just a moment, Trish, who's with the Rethink I-375 Coalition. And as we continue the conversation, we're going to get into a little bit more about what that vision might look like, concerns, and ways that we might be able to make the process a little bit better. Keep it locked right here as we continue on the Metro.
Welcome back to the Metro right here on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I am Nick Austin. And right now we're talking with Trish Hubble, who's part of the organizing committee for the Rethink I-375 Community Coalition. She also lives just off Lafayette and Orleans Street on I-375, which means that you certainly have interest in what's happening here. And when we were finishing up the conversation, or just started the conversation, or where we ended, I should say, previously, was that you were questioning where's the city's neighborhood or the city or neighborhood framework plan for this. And I guess what I was trying to unpack or understand a little bit better is that something that the I-375 or Rethink I-375 Community Coalition has in mind, a vision of what that might look like? Or what you're saying is we need the state, or we need the government to create one for us to then react to and see how we feel about it?
Well, I think it can be collaborative. I think the city of Detroit and the neighborhoods can help create that framework. MDOT they do roads. That's their function. That's what they do. And so I think the city should take the lead in the framework and creating that framework. And like the Southwest Greenway framework, it had a lot of neighborhood input. And I think that, if we just take a little bit of time to really look to the future. I mean, smart cities, they're more pedestrian friendly. They look at alternative transportation. They're more cycling friendly. We need, especially if we want to attract young people and millennials, they want to be able to not rely so much on the automobile. I hate to say that, but it's true. So we need to look for ways where people feel safe. And
so I just want to make sure, because I hear you say that, and I just want to first acknowledge it, and then it makes me wonder, I've heard this come up again, walkability, bikes. Does this deal with the lanes? Are there too many lanes? Like if we were trying to simplify it, is this something where we're like, why even have a road there in the first place? Or should it be a 2-lane road? Are these the types of things that we're talking about? And if so, is there buy-in with all of the members of the Rethink I-375 Community Coalition on that point?
Well, there's not buy-in. I mean, there are many different ideas about what it should look like. We have just started to amplify our concern because MDOT is ready to hire a progressive design build contractor. And at that point, it's going to be more difficult, to really frame up what we think is a good vision for the future. Personally, I would say, yes, 6 lanes are too many, but that's just me. I mean, I'm not saying that's a uniform thing.
Sure. And I think one of the things that we would think about, or the state would probably say, and we've spoken to the state before, is that while there's those interests also, the fact is, especially because it's coming from federal dollars, is what we're using for this, right, is for an interstate, there still is a need to respect the travel of that interstate road, the ability for folks to get from point A to point B. Goal being, let's do it in a less or non-destructive way. But there are businesses, there are locations that also rely on that transit. And frankly, I've even spoken to people who personally use it, right? Now, maybe not as much as what we have right now, but we're balancing a lot of tensions. What would you say in response when we're talking about reducing those lanes to the fact that there still is interest from the federal government and the state in being able to allow people to transfer through?
Well, reducing those lanes, I think, is a good first step. I think people are concerned about the pedestrian safety. I mean, trying to get across 6 lanes. Is this going to look like another telegraph? I mean, we want to. So what will the speed limit be? Just looking at those designs. But that really is an MDOT role, right? But I think it has to be driven, again, by a vision. Do we have a vision as a community group? Not really. I mean, we have some ideas, but that's why we really want to take that extra time to be led through a process where it will really just transform the city into the future. And, now we have, this is a little bit off topic, but the Rensen is in flux. We don't know what will happen there. All of this can be part of that sort of downtown neighborhood framework and be strategic about it.
Well, very good. Well, let's talk about what that looks like then. You talk about going back and forth between people not being heard. The state is trying to do community engagement. It sounds to me like folks are saying it's not quite good enough. Do you have any ideas of what better community engagement would look like? Is it more meetings? Is it having question and answer sessions where you give a specific list of questions and you get a specific list of responses? What are we talking about here in terms of engagement for you?
Well, I think the city of Detroit needs to, planning and development, needs to really take a role, a more active role, not that they have not been involved, but a more active role to be the leader in this and maybe work with, some of the district managers from the city, city of Detroit.
Kind of like have the city of Detroit as an intermediary in this process then?
Yes. I mean, it's our city. We need to drive the future of the city. And I think that we're all on point with that. We agree that we really want, we just see a road project, but not a vision behind it. And the vision should lead the road.
Understood, and that's where we're going to have to end it for today. But thank you so much for joining us to discuss this. Trish Hubble with the Rethink I-375 Community Coalition. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Metro, Thursday, May 15th. You can listen to the recent episodes online at WDET.org, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Our engineer is Nate Bender. Our assistant producers are Anil Scott and Sydney Walkley.
The Metro is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear and want to support the Metro, consider becoming a member at WDET.org/donate.
This is WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thank you so much for listening to us today, and you all have a great day.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.